So it's been a while since I posted because for the last 2 weekends, I have been grappling with one of the worst warps I've ever wound. And I want to talk to you about it, not to beat myself up, but to explain how to recover when you have a bad warp situation. Because, and boy, has this been driven home to me while I've been weaving. When you're working with a bad warp, and by bad, I mean uneven ends, lots of broken ends, poor beaming, so the tension isn't even all the way across. Whenever you're working with a bad warping situation, it's going to affect your satisfaction when you're actually weaving it. Wow, is that ever true? So let's talk about what happened and why I made some of the decisions I made and how I am attempting to recover from it. And then I'll do another post on uh, the the weft issues that have come as a consequence, not as a consequence, but some of the weft issues I've been dealing with as well. So to recap, what this project is, this is a double weave, double width blanket. So on this edge, where you can see this gold thread, this is my fold edge, and the opposite end, those are the two selvages. So if I walk over here and press on what I'm calling my check treadle, which raises just the four shafts in the front, I've got a nice clean shed, which is what I want, and it means that I don't seem to have any floats that caught the bottom edge. So on a double width blanket like this, double wide, uh, you warp the shafts of one. So the top layer is always on the first four shafts, and the bottom layer is on the last four shafts. So when you thread the heddles, you thread one for the top layer, five for the back layer, two, six, three, seven, four, eight, all the way across. And then you thread those because I am doing each layer is 10 ends per inch in my 10 dent reed, but when you combine them, it's 20 ends per inch. So I've got two warp ends coming through each side. And when I weave this, I start at the opposite edge, the unfolded selvage, the loose selvage, and I weave across just on the top layer. So that means I am raising shafts 1 and 3. So shafts 1 and 3 go up, and I'll demonstrate this in the weft. Shafts 1 and 3 go up. So now the weft yarn is over here. I go back by weaving my first pick on the bottom layer, and it means I have to get all 4 of my top layer shafts out of the way, and then 5 and 7 go up. So that, or 6 and 8, I can't remember now. We'll see it when I do the weaving, the weft episode, and I weave across. So now my weft yarn is back over at the loose selvage, the open selvage. Then I come back across on the bottom layer. So again, shafts 1, 2, 3, 4 have to get out of the way, and 2 of my plain weave shafts also get raised and come back across. So now I'm over here. Finally, I am making the last pick, the second plain weave pick on my top layer. So only 2 shafts go up, this time 2 and 4. So that is the course of plain weave. And when I take this bad boy off the loom, I have the exquisite pleasure, unless I accidentally caught a thread in the wrong, a weft end in the wrong layer, I have the exquisite pleasure of unfolding it and watching it open like a book, being twice as wide. And then I will take this orange warp end out because it is just there to help ease any closeness at the turn with the fold of the cloth. So that is the structure. So what happened with my warping is a little complicated. Uh, I made a bunch of just bonehead mistakes, like threading the wrong heddles and not allowing enough room on my reed to slay the whole width across. And that was causing me frustration. And those were just, the kind of mistakes you make when you're just not counting right or you're tired. I also miscounted the warp ends as I made the chains. But the real problem was after I discovered that I needed to rethread the entire thing because I had done it, I had threaded the whole thing of 720 ends wrong. uh, I had to rethread all the heddles, and that meant unbeaming the warp because I had already gotten that far. I had already tied on, I already woven a header, and then I went, wait a minute, this just does not look right. So I unbeamed the warp, and if I had warped from front to back and had bundles of tied warp ends connected to my apron bar at the warp beam, it wouldn't have been a problem. But I warped back to front. And when you warp back to front, the thing you do is you put your third apron bar through the uncut loop ends of your warp chain. And that means that if they roll around, if they get out of place, if they get uh, messed up in any way, you're going to have one group of warp ends that is shorter and consequently the same group that is longer when you get to the front. And that is what happened to me. I had one section of this warp where I just had not, I had discombobulated things at the back, and then it caused problems at the front. So let's pause for a moment so that I can show you how I recovered from that. And if you're asking yourself or me, Deb, why didn't you just toss the whole warp and start over with a fresh one? It was because I didn't want to run out of yarn. Remember how Yarn Chicken has dominated my life? Well, it's really going to dominate my life when it's a project where I was trying to use up a lot of stash yarn or yarns that I could not get more of. And several of my warp yarns, as well as my weft yarns, are in that situation. Uh, what I could and should have done, now that I think back, is just rewind this section that was problematic, but I opted not to do that. So that was one of the things going on. I didn't want to waste all this yarn. The second thing going on, uh, was I did trim off about, I'm going to say, 12 inches, maybe 18 inches, half a yard. And I had allowed an extra half yard in my warp for sampling, which, oh my goodness, thank goodness I did that. But I still had a section of warp ends, and you can see it right here where all these little knots are. I still had a section of warp ends that were too short. And I just wanted a couple of inches. I just needed a couple of inches to tie on. So I opted to just do that. I had, from my cutoff ends, I had extra of these colors. So I just overhand knotted and pulled everything, overhand knotted, threaded them through the reed, and tied onto the front apron bar. So that part is going to be fine. I suspect in the end, I am going to, when I untie all these knots on the apron bar, if I don't have enough for fringe, I can always just hem this blanket. It'll be fine. So that was solution number two. And I just needed it in this small warp section. Uh, so I recovered from that, and I did have some broken warp ends. One of the reasons I prefer to warp from back to front instead of front to back is when you warp from back to front, you've got your lee sticks, and I've showed this before in previous videos. You've got your lee sticks, very messy house, back here, but because your heddles aren't threaded and you don't have anything going on with the reed yet, the lee sticks are what, and the rattle are keeping all your entire warp chain in order. Your least sticks through the cross. Keep your entire warp chain in order as you're winding around the warp beam. When you warp from back to front, or front to back, at least when I do it, I have you start by slaying the reed, and then you thread the heddles, and because you only need the cross when you're slaying the reed, you don't have least sticks in there until now. I'm going to modify my technique so that I can have least sticks helping me out. Uh, and that means that when you are beaming the warp, your heddles are helping to keep all the ends in the order they should be. And I hate that. I hate that feeling of tension on my heddles because they've come to a little snarl or something, uh, some kind of problem. And I don't like bending my heddles. So in future, somehow, and I will share this with you, I'm going to figure out a way and it's not actually going to be that hard, to slay my reed. If I work from front to back, to slay my reed, recreate the cross somehow, and I probably can't do this until I get my threadles headed, my heddles threaded. But then put back in some least sticks to help ease the pressure on my precious flat inserted eye heddles, so that the least sticks are helping to basically soothe everything out as it goes back through the back beam. Another technique I'm going to try when the next time I do a back to front warp, which will be my next project, is to mark with a sewing marker, one of those fade when you get it wet or expose it to heat markers. I'm going to mark the loop ends for the back of my loom so that if I run into problems, I can recreate where that turning point should be on the warp chains. And a final thing might be somehow to insert my magic hair ties that do everything um, around around groups of the warp ends as they're going around that back apron bar. Again, just so they don't slide out of place. I don't know how this will work, but I will be experimenting with this and I will share that with you in future videos.